Change in a committed romantic relationship can be difficult, but it is very possible. I'm visiting family on the East Coast this week.
I think the tug is probably keeping it like helping it go to where it's going.
Today I'll be discussing the necessary elements of relationship change with Lara Hammock. Why are we so prone to focus on the changes our partner needs to make? Throughout our lives, we long to be seen, to be heard, to matter, to belong, to be loved. And those closest to us in commitment and in proximity are the ones from whom we deeply desire this pursuit and this care. So we find ourselves in relationships in which we sometimes don't feel pursued, or in which our partner's behaviors make us feel like we don't matter. How do we shift from focusing on our partner's need to change? Like, how do we deal with our clear longing that our partner changes? We have to get to a place of deep acceptance of who my partner is, while at the same time being aware of my longings and accepting them. And then I can start to make that shift where I start to focus on what can I do to contribute to this change. Hi, Lara.
Hi, Jolyn.
Are you good to just kind of start from the top and go? And what time do you have to leave? Like in 45 minutes about?
45 minutes. Yep. I got a client at 45 minutes.
Okay, so we're talking about relationships today, and many of us have relationships that are in need of change. Today, we really want to focus on thinking about, is it even possible to affect change in committed romantic relationships? We know it's difficult, but we also know it's possible. I'm visiting family on the East Coast this week, and I also am excited to have this opportunity to discuss the elements of relationship change with you, Lara. And you're a couples therapist just outside of Washington, D.C. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I see both individuals and couples, basically split my practice, and I have a private practice that's on the Virginia side of Washington, D.C.
Okay. So tell me about what you see in relationships and why relationships are key to our life satisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're one of the absolute top, if not the top kind of component of life satisfaction. And the question is, when we start to feel that disconnection with the people that matter to us, how do we get it back? What is connection? What is good connection? And how do we get more of that in our lives?
I find it funny, like even in my own personal life, and certainly in all the couples that come in, the most obvious changes are the ones that my partner needs to make. Like, this is really important. He needs to change, or she needs to change. Is this the place to start? How my partner needs to change.
Yeah, when I find when couples come in like that, I mean, first of all, it's so easy to get stuck there with them because it ends up being a bit of a stalemate, right? I mean, if you talk to each partner, they each have something they want to change about she needs to be less critical and he needs to help out more, or whatever. Sorry, that was super stereotypical. But when they're pointing fingers at each other, it just ends up being kind of a stalemate. And as a couples counselor, you can get stuck in there with them in that kind of like the kind of quicksand of the stalemate. So yeah, I mean that's where we all like to focus, and it's certainly easier to see where our partners need to change than where our own contribution is. And so yeah, I think it's an easy place for people to start out.
So, and why do you think that is? Why are we so prone to focus on the changes our partner needs to make?
If you think about it, like, we learn how to be in relationships from our families of origin. Most of us, I mean, there's probably a lucky few, but most of us don't have great modeling from our families of origin. But that's all we know, really. How to have conflict, how to talk about things that matter to us. We learn those in our families of origin. So we don't necessarily know that what we're doing is problematic, but we can certainly see where our partner is getting off track. So it's harder, I think, for us to like to see how we're contributing to the dynamic, and much easier and clearer to see where our partner is doing things wrong.
Yeah. And I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that our attachment desires and needs never really go away. So we are so aware of that deep, deep need to be seen, to be heard, to matter, to belong. And it's just like we're walking around with that awareness. And then those people that are closest to us in commitment or proximity are the ones from whom we deeply desire this pursuit and this care. So it's just, we are just so aware of it. And we also are so aware of where they're falling short.
And again, from our families of origin, if we weren't seen like that as kids, we're really trying to get that from our primary romantic relationship. And sometimes we just don't feel like we're getting our needs met. There's this quote by Ralph Nichols that goes something like, the most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and to be understood. It's almost like we don't really exist unless the people that care most about us really see us for who we are. I think we're always just longing to see ourselves reflected back in our loved ones' eyes.
That's a really good point. Okay, so we find ourselves in these relationships in which we do not feel pursued, or in which our partner's behaviors make us feel like we don't matter, or certainly don't matter enough. How do we shift from focusing on our partner's change? How do we deal with that clear longing that our partner changes, and then shift to focusing more on how can I contribute?
So this is a really tough question, and there's a lot of reasons, like kind of rational reasons why it's important to focus on ourselves. So if I were going to do a convincing job, I would say those, and maybe I'll get back to those. But I think the real reason it's very hard to focus on what we are doing is that we have to see our partner for who they really are and what they're really about, like kind of see what is. And that means that a lot of times we're just confronted with some disappointment and some sadness and a little bit of pain. And I think we're all just running from that as fast as we possibly can. So I think the process of focusing, taking that focus off of our partner and putting it on ourselves is something that requires a lot of, I mean, I don't want to say the word grief, because that's usually devoted to death. But I think there's some loss processing that has to happen in order to do that. But I will say, and here's where the justification comes in. It's just where the change actually starts to happen. I mean, I can stand in quicksand with a couple for months and months and months while they focus on each other. Once either one of them begins to focus on themselves, strengthening themselves, figuring out what they're contributing, stopping some behaviors, starting healthier behaviors, that's when things start to shift. You just can't change anyone but yourself.
I love that. I love that. Just that whole deep acceptance of, okay, this is where it's at. This is who my partner is. This is where I am at. These are my longings, and some of them are being met and some of them are not being met. And just some grief around that, some sadness.
Well, and I think people come to us and they kind of want us to just, if I were able to change their partner, they wouldn't have to feel bad, right? They want the fix right there. Like, if you just change him or her, then I don't have to feel this way anymore.
That's true.
But I don't have a magic wand. And if I did, I would charge a lot more for my sessions.
This is true. Your wait
So
list is pretty long.
But part of it is that just the pain of getting to, this is who they really are. And there's some shifts that can happen around the edges, but I can't wave a magic wand and change them into a completely different person.
Right. Okay, so now I'm kind of accepting this and I'm ready to kind of look at myself. Where do I start?
Yeah. So I guess if there was like kind of three key things that I would say are important for making these changes individually, or changes to your own contribution. The very first thing is emotional regulation, self-reflection, knowing what you want, and what's important to you, and also being able to communicate all of this in a way that's open and gentle.
I think that's kind of reassuring. I like the self-reflection part because, okay, it's not just about dying to self or I don't matter.
Yeah.
I do matter. Even as I'm accepting my partner, how I feel and what I long for really does matter. And
Mhm.
we're not sweeping that away. Anyway, okay, so we've got emotional regulation, self-reflection, and gentle but open communication. Which of those are key? Where do we start?
So, well, just to jump back to what you said just now, um, you know, well, let me answer that first, which
Okay.
is I think that the foundational skill there or key ingredient is emotional regulation. As much as we would like to believe that we can kind of just flip a switch and make a change, every single one of these relationship changes that we're talking about, we learned in our families of origin, we learned because this is how we learned how to be loved, how to belong, how to stay safe. And so there's emotion that comes up behind it. So if you are a person who is used to, for example, sweeping things under the rug that bother you, the idea of coming forward and saying something about that is going to bring up fear, um, or self-doubt or pain. And so being able to regulate those feelings for yourself, understand them, and bring that temperature down a bit is key to all of this. Right? It is key to all of the other things that we're talking about. There's no way to have open and gentle communication without emotional regulation. There's no way to really self-reflect without emotional regulation. So to me, it's like the foundational sort of concept.
That reminds me, I'm not sure how much we're going to go into it, but yeah, our protection strategies from our families of origin really affect what that emotional dysregulation looks like.
Yeah.
And some of us are just going to kind of shut down, leave, or just shut down even in the room. I'm just shut down and I'm leaving. And others of
Mhm.
us are going to be like making it happen and chasing the other person and trying to shake them into relational connection or yell
Yeah.
at them until they love us. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of both of that kind of
Or cling, cling and give up ourselves completely. And, what can I do differently? What can I do? How can I shift? I mean, I think of there as like sort of four different protections that we go into, but yeah, that covers the basics.
right. Or even in self-blame and self like shame, like it must be me. We talked a lot about how often we blame the partner, but there's also couples in which it's all me. So
Yeah.
all of that is examples of emotional dysregulation.
And they're all areas where you just get trapped and stuck. There's all of this relationship work if you think about it as climbing a mountain. I mean, the mountain is worth climbing because it's not just that these skills and these tools you're going to be able to use in your relationship. It'll make your relationship better with your primary romantic in
Mhm.
your primary romantic relationship, but it makes all your relationships better. I mean, doing this work for myself, like I'm a better mom, I'm a better friend, I'm a better daughter, along with being a better wife. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about emotional regulation.
So if we talk about emotional regulation, like this is kind of a buzz term being used, but like what does it actually mean, right? And so Jolyn, you just went through what high activation looks like for a lot of people, and it's not the same for everybody. For some people, it's complete shutdown and withdrawal, kind of a freeze response. For some people, it's fleeing. For other people, it is like an attack, kind of fight reaction. You got all of the different responses, but when you're at, say, an 8 out of 10 of intensity, you're going to be feeling one of those things. Um, but to me, one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves is to constantly take our emotional temperature. Like, how activated am I right now?
So tell me
Am I?
about that. Taking your
Yeah, so
emotional
this is
temperature. So tell
this
me.
is like this is a little concept that I came up with, and actually, maybe I have my little. Yeah, I do. So here's my emotional thermometer that I have laminated in my office.
Okay, that looks awesome.
And and it's basically just like a thermometer that goes from 0 to 10, 0 being super calm, easygoing, no problems whatsoever, and 10 being as like kind of emotionally activated and intense as you will ever feel. And again, just like Jolyn said, that looks different for everyone, but you know, a real key skill in emotional regulation is learning what you look like when you're super activated. Do you get really angry and yell? Or are you a person who dissociates and goes blank? Or do you do something in between those two things? And so being able to take your emotional temperature is important because it helps you to decide what to do next. When you're too emotionally activated, it's hard for you to turn on the cognitive part of your brain. It's hard for you to make good decisions. I mean, you're essentially in survival mode. So you shouldn't really make decisions when you're all the way up there at, say, like a 7, 8, 9 of intensity. So when you're up there, yeah, go ahead.
So when you're up there, it's a desperation, right? Like it's maybe if I think of myself, my personality is the type that will just kind of want to grab somebody. We got to make this happen. We have to make it happen now. And,
Yeah,
and
I'm the same way. That's the way I am. But like, there's a lot of different. Some people roll up in a little ball, and like go and sit in a corner. Like they don't. It's just, or they want to pack their suitcase and flee.
and so yeah, maybe finding characteristic adjectives that describe how you feel when you are at a 10. And I think I would feel desperation.
And I think it's a bunch of things, right? It's like how you feel in your body, so your body sensations, how your body feels. Like some people just feel absolutely numb and frozen. And like everything has kind of slowed down. Some people feel super, super activated, like nervous system is amped up, heart is pounding, sweating, trembling. So it's all very individual how you're going to feel when you're highly activated. But knowing that about yourself is super important because then you get to make good decisions for yourself. And so, for example, if you're going to have a really hard conversation with your spouse, say you're the person who likes to sweep things under the rug, and you get the sense of, but you're pretty upset, right? And okay, so I've promised my couples therapist that I'm now going to bring this up. I'm going to bring up this hard topic with my spouse. And then the emotional activation comes up, right? So here I am at an 8 out of 10. And what am I feeling? So just checking in with yourself, like, okay, I'm an 8 out of 10. What does that look like for me? It looks like, I'm shaking, my heart's pounding, my mouth is dry, my
Palms
palms are
might be
sweaty.
sweaty, yes. And the heart is definitely just increased.
I feel like running, right? Like I feel like all of this like kind of intensity in my body. That's how I feel when I'm super amped up. What am I thinking? Right? Because there's thoughts that go along with this as well. Again, really kind of individual to each person, but it could be self-doubt. It could be a lot of you know, who am I to do this? Am I good enough to be able to have this conversation? All this stuff, like beliefs come up from our childhood. So there's a body response, there are thoughts, there are emotions. It could be anxiety, it could be fear, it could be overwhelm, it could be anger and frustration. Could be contempt, right? Like that is another emotion that's very protective. But
Well,
anyway, all
for
of
the
that,
other person, like either it could be contempt for the other person or for myself. Like it
either
can
one.
go either way. Yeah.
And from my experience, people who feel contemptuous about others almost always feel contemptuous about themselves at times, most of the time.
Mhm.
So anyway, knowing that about yourself of where you get to when you are emotionally activated is really important because then you start to make better decisions for yourself. When you're up in this kind of like orange and red zone, that your job really isn't to make decisions or to approach someone and engage, but it's to calm yourself down. And then that's another big question is like, how I ask this to all my clients, what do you do to calm yourself down? And most people don't have an answer for this.
Hmm.
I mean, do you find that to be the case as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean the clients want to explore it with me because they realize, especially once they've been seeing me for a while, they realize how important like this emotional regulation is, but we often explore it together.
Yeah.
Things
So
like exercise, maybe going for a walk around the block. Like I find that couples tend to find, or individuals tend to find that opportunity to just, I'm taking a 5-minute break, I'm taking a 10-minute break, like with a time that I'm coming back. So there's
Mhm.
still that sense of commitment, but I need some time here.
Yeah.
That helps a lot of my people.
So a little bit of time to just like go inward, or to meditate a bit or to get a break from the other person and the energy of all of what's happening. That's, but everybody's got something different. I mean, some people can I'm highly sensitive, and so like that is a two-edged sword. That means that I can get overwhelmed with, textures and sounds, but it also means that I calm down really fast with those things. So if I can put the things around me, my membranes are just kind of permeable.
That's awesome. Tell us a little more about that. So for someone that's highly sensitive, how would that show up? And also, how would that help you in a situation like this?
So where that shows up is if somebody's yelling at me, I get overwhelmed pretty fast because of the noise. It's very, very loud. And I'm sensitive to a lot of things. Like not everybody is sensitive about the same things. I'm highly sensitive to smell, sound, touch, not as much taste. And so if someone's yelling, it's not so much that they're yelling at me as the sound is overwhelming to me. So I'll flood a little bit faster, meaning that kind of like my emotional activation goes up faster than other people would because of just the sensory overload. But the superpower with highly sensitive people is that it goes both ways. So you can be negatively impacted by a lot of sensory overload, but you can also use your kind of sensory hypersensitivity to be able to calm yourself down fast, to be able to find joy and awe in things because you just let so much in.
Okay. So what
To
would
be
you?
able to empathize with others if that happens to be part of your profession. Yeah.
So how would you self-regulate? How do you self-regulate?
Oh, like I have a whole routine. I mean, I'll put on a British mystery. I will make myself a cup of hot cocoa. I get a warm blanket, one that's actually like got a heated element to it. I journal a ton. I tap. So it just depends on what's going on with me.
Right.
But I'll do some like EFT tapping.
Right.
And it works pretty
Well, this
fast.
this this is
Yeah,
so good. I
right?
just like the cross screen. Thank
Oh,
you.
this, the
Tapping. Yeah.
havening. Yeah, the havening.
And, part of this is also back to the acceptance thing. Like if you get to just to accept that, oh, can I be involved in self-soothing here? Like, does it have to be my partner that brings me joy? Does it have to be
Exactly.
my partner that could help me regulate emotionally now?
And for those of us who want to control things, either by demanding change or by making ourselves change, doing too much, basically, like it's hard to take that break. It's hard to pull away because we're holding on so tight, you
Mhm.
know? But to be able to do that is a real superpower, right? Like then you can figure out that you can do it yourself. You don't need somebody else there in order to make you feel better.
I don't want to let that slip by about that reference to controlling others by how much we are contributing. Like that's pretty um deceptive almost. Like I feel like I'm giving so much. Why isn't he changing? Why isn't she changing? Look at all I'm contributing. And it's manipulative. I guess maybe that's the word I was looking for. And it's
Well,
really a
it can be
desire
really,
to control. Mhm.
yeah. I mean, it is, and so for example, I have quite a few clients actually where one of the partners feels like they're more emotionally mature. And in a lot of ways, they are. They know themselves a bit better. They know how to kind of emotionally regulate, but they're giving too much of themselves. If their spouse is yelling at them, they're like, how much of this do I need to take? And I'm like, you don't need to take that.
Right.
If they are yelling at you, like they're doing too much, essentially. They're giving too much of themselves in that situation. All they need to say is, okay, I'm overwhelmed by what's happening here. I'm going to go away and I'll check back in with you in 20 minutes or after this timeout is done and see if this can be something that I can handle.
Exactly.
But in other words, like just because you know how to regulate doesn't mean you need to give that to your partner for them to blow through that.
Just
And I don't know if
like
that's exactly what you're saying, but it's a bit of a like all of these, like that kind of like demanding from others and doing too much yourself. I mean, both of those are control tactics.
right. Yeah. And control tactics are there for a really good reason. It's not like they're not there for a good reason. We are
And
definitely.
they're helpful in a lot of ways, right? I mean, those are the people who are active, who are making things work, who are contributing in a lot of ways. But in the context of a interpersonal relationship, there's so there you can do too much. You can hold on too tight.
Yeah, and the more you want to control, the less intimate you will feel with your partner. I mean, it just you can't have it both ways.
Right. Yeah. Because when you're controlling, you're not letting them be them.
Mm.
And, the mark of a healthy relationship is two healthy, strong people in a union. And so whoever your partner is, that's who they are. Let them.
That's it. A very solid place to be at.
And of course, you can influence them by asking, right? You can always ask for
Okay, which is
changes.
the perfect segue into our next
Mhm.
topic. So gentle but open communication. And I think you've done some work around this, and I want to hear about your come to worksheet as well.
Yeah, I mean, and this is based on just a lot of my own experience being married for 27 years and not being particularly good at complaining, but also a lot of reading in terms of like Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication and, the Gottmans and how they have, but I've kind of devised my own worksheet of how to complain in a constructive way. And it really helps to structure a complaint, right? Like all of us need to be able to complain. If you're in a long-term relationship with somebody and you live together, I mean, you're going to have stuff that happens where you're not very happy with what they've done or what they've contributed or how they've spoken to you or whatever. And we all have to complain to each other. We shouldn't complain incessantly and it shouldn't be critical. In other words, it's different when you say, I don't like when your socks are on the floor to like you're a slob and always leave your socks on the floor. Like, I don't like your socks on the floor as a complaint. You're a slob and you always leave your socks on the floor as a criticism. So you want to do the individual thing as opposed to the more generalized, like kind
But
of
if it doesn't
moralized.
have the same oomph, like you're a slob, you're thinking this will really change him.
Yeah, that'll do it. That
Wow.
really motivates people to change. Um, so anyway, so I devised this worksheet, and the acronym is come to, and it helps people to um, parcel out how they what actually happened without any interpretation, what the meaning they're making of it is, because it's coming through the filter of like my experience, my feelings, my beliefs, my values, right? So it's not just you made me feel this. It is when you did this, this is how I interpreted it. So, that it helps you talk about your emotions and not just frustration. People love to just say they're frustrated. You got to dig under that for what else exists under there. Um, and then, kind of what's important about this for you that you want your partner to take away, not like pick up your socks, or remember to pick up your socks the next time, but maybe something like, I'm somebody who's very sensitive to my environment. And when things are picked up, I feel like I can function better. I feel like I have more control and like I work better in an environment that's more because I'm very distracted by the things that are around me. So it's helpful to me to have an environment that's a little cleaner. And I realize that it's tricky for you. You're not somebody who is so bothered by that. So I know that you're doing me a favor, if you're listening to this. That sort of context also is really important. But the whole process builds in an emotional regulation piece in that you need to regulate yourself first before you can even fill out the worksheet, and then you need to regulate yourself even farther before you can share your complaint with your partner.
Hmm.
So that was a lot of
Well, just what I was going to say is that even as you switched that approach, I could just feel my body relaxing. Like
Mm,
as soon as you kind of went back to why this is important to me, and even that acknowledgement that it might not be so important to me and actually be quite difficult for me, like
yeah.
my body just felt very receptive to what you were hearing, what you were saying.
It's for some reason we don't want to say to our partners, we don't want to, we feel like we get the upper hand if we're like, okay, I'm right about this. Everybody would agree I'm right. I'm the neat one, you're the sloppy one. But the fact is, like, It's just a preference. I mean, unless it's like leading to hygienic issues and you've got like rats in your house or something, it's really, I mean, I tell the story about my dad who likes to leave all the cabinet doors open in the kitchen.
Mhm.
That's his preference. He wants to leave them all open. It drives my mom. Okay, they're not married anymore, but it used to drive her nuts.
You should have listened to this video.
Yeah, exactly. It
Back in
might be
time.
why they're not married anymore. But, that's his preference. And it's not bad or good. It just is. He might, his partner now,
Mhm.
actually, the way they resolved it is they just took all the cabinets off the hinges, the doors off the hinges. So
Okay.
everything's just open. They have that like open cabinet plan. And that is the way they resolve that problem. But really, all these things are just preferences. And if you can let your partner know that you understand that this is a bit of a, they're doing you a favor. They're doing something extra because they love you. Oh, that goes so far, to be like, oh, actually, like I kind of want to do that now. I'm not being shamed into it. I'm doing it because I love them.
Yeah, more so than, obviously, like you said before, everybody would agree with me.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of like superior moralizing view. Anyway, the whole process is to be open and gentle. Like open, some people think, and the reason I didn't use the word direct is because a lot of times direct people take it as I can criticize you if I want to. But when you're criticizing someone else, you're not really being open about yourself. You're not saying anything about you.
That's
You're
true.
saying something that you want from your partner and you're saying what you believe about that, but you're not saying why these things are important to you or what your values are. So it's a process of communicating and being open about yourself and doing it in a gentle way so that your partner can receive it.
I have a question. Like, do any of your clients have some resistance because somehow it feels when I'm open and gentle, like I'm kind of holding it more with an open hand, and maybe he won't change. And if I just, knock him on the head with a hammer, like now he can see how important it is that he changes or she changes.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, right? Like, and particularly if, you're with an open hand, but it's the kind of thing that needs to be brought up more than once, probably, if it really bothers you, if it's something that's really important to you. And that kind of like gradual erosion is the way that the behavior change works. It's the way that you change your mind. I mean, nobody just switches their mind like that, and particularly if it's an emotional issue. Um,
That,
and
that's
yeah,
very helpful to know. Like just to remember, these are gradual shifts. They're small shifts and gradual shifts. And
yeah.
especially if you're going to be exposed to it again and again, it's that much more important to have this gentle and open communication.
And the point is not so much that you get your way out of the complaint. The point is that your partner actually understands you a bit better.
Tell me about that.
If you come into it saying, what I want from this is for him to pick up his socks, really, you've gone to a solution too fast.
Okay.
And you haven't really like put out all of the building blocks of the solution, you
Mhm.
know? And so if you think instead, I don't like the socks on the floor. I'm gonna try to pull my brain back from solutioning too fast on this.
Mhm.
Solution being pick up your socks.
I want the floor clean. Got it. Yes.
But I'm gonna complain about this so that my partner understands a bit more about me and what is important to me and why a clear environment, what that really does for me. And that's not a one and done. That's a constant communication and conversation about like who am I versus who are you? And if you're not open to who they are, for example, if they say, well, that doesn't bother me at all, and then you immediately in your head condemn them as bad or less than, like why would they be open to your perspective if you're not open to theirs back? Right? I mean, the door has to be open on both sides.
Another thing that sometimes encourages me, or just as a really good reminder, is the Gottman research around contempt. And I think we slide towards contempt so easily when we don't like something. And
Yeah.
contempt is very dangerous for a relationship. So just
Yeah.
to remember that contempt is very dangerous, and just to even kind of recognize, am I sliding towards contempt? If we think of acceptance earlier on that we talked about, and how easily we slide, it's a very slippery slope down to contempt.
Well, and I think the reason that it's so corrosive for relationships is because it's the interpersonal cousin of disgust. And
Mm.
disgust is there so that we get away from toxic substances, from things that are bad from us, right? We feel disgust about, mold
Mhm.
or rodents. And I mean, historically, those things have not been so great for
Right.
humans, with the exception of penicillin. But anyway, and so like it really distances us from our relationships when we go into contempt. Okay, so I have a little thing that I do, which is I think all of these different emotions have like a body
Okay.
station or posture that goes with them. So I think sometimes you can't really notice when you're speaking in a contemptuous way, but you can recognize when you have assumed the body posture.
Okay.
And the contemptuous body posture is almost always upright carriage, probably a little like you put something in between you. So like maybe you maybe even lean back a bit and then you look down your nose. So your head's like inclined, the whole thing is like kind of distanced and then there's the lip that goes up a little bit, right? The
People
like
actually do this.
yeah, oh yeah, and I can see it on people and I'll call it because nobody likes to say that they feel contemptuous or disgusted by their partner, but if I can see the lip go up, I know. But if
Awesome.
you can sense yourself doing that, and even when you don't know that you're being demeaning or you're being kind of critical or you're like you can square your shoulders, come back to a normal posture, put your head straight, and then and it actually switches your emotion. Like, you don't have to rely on your brain to shift your body. A lot of times it's so much faster to do the opposite. Get your body to convince your brain.
That's encouraging, especially for those of us that really don't have a lot of emotional awareness. We can just kind of start with the body.
There's so many keys to it or clues to it, so you can start wherever works best.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's time for us to wrap up. Is there anything that you want our viewers to kind of have as a takeaway today?
The one thing I'll say is, I mean, definitely, taking your emotional temperature, super important, being able to, but all of these, like they take time, so give yourself grace. Like these habits took a long time to develop. They're going to take a long time to unwind. If you um are convinced that you can do it in a nanosecond, you're going to be disappointed in yourself. So just like, when you get it right, like give yourself a little pat on the back. And when you get it wrong, know that you're moving in the right direction.
Hmm. And is there hope for romantic relationships, these long-term committed relationships, and you're kind of been irritated and you're getting more and more irritated, and maybe it's hopeless? Tell me a little bit about hope.
I think Esther Perel says that, most people will have two or three marriages in their life, and many of them are to the same person.
That's awesome.
And I love that because I just feel like it gives this sense of hope. It gives the sense of kind of we can change ourselves. I just met with a new couple that I'm going to be seeing going forward, and they've had a crisis that sort of rocked their relationship. And, they're at a crossroads now. They
Mhm.
can decide whether they want to enrich their relationship or, whether they want to keep going the way that they have always gone. And I think it's just really hopeful to know that you can shift your relationship throughout and have a different kind of marriage than the one you have right now.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Jolyn.
Wish you a good day, and we'll
You
talk
too.
to you again soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.